You know you want to retire early. You know you want to withdraw your money so you can live the life you want to now. You know you want to do that before 59 and a half, but maybe you feel stuck. Today's video is for you. Basically, I'm going to go through 2 rules that allow you to take money before 59 and a half without penalty from various accounts. And I'm going to break it down in 2 ways. There's one called the Rule of 55, and that's for those of you that have diligently saved in your 401k or 403b or other employer plan. And the other is called substantially equal periodic payments. That's for those of you that have large IRAs and you want to begin withdrawing those before 59 and a half. I'm going to walk you through how they work, how they're calculated, and maybe why you would want to choose one over the other. I'm Forrest Dutton. I am the owner of Brightworks Financial Planning. I'm a certified financial planner. Today's video is meant to educate you so you can make the best decision on utilizing these rules to your advantage. It's not meant to be personal, financial, tax, or investment advice. Again, just for education, so let's get in it. Let's start by discussing the Rule of 55. What does it mean, who is it for, and how might you utilize this as part of your early retirement strategy? So the Rule of 55, simply stated, in the calendar year that you turn 55, if you separate from service, whether that's retirement or just quit your job or you're laid off, you can take penalty-free distributions from that plan. That can be really good because normally you have to wait until 59 and a half for that, so this is an exception to the rule. The great thing about the Rule of 55 is you could then go on to work part-time. So say that you stop working full-time and you have a very large 401k. This could be a really good strategy for an early retiree who then uses some part-time income and some distribution income from that previous 401k so that they can then mitigate maybe future RMDs or maybe just live the life they want to now. So I think it can be a really, really good strategy. Let me give you a couple pitfalls and maybe a couple nuanced things that you may not know about how this actually works. So first of all, if you roll the money over into an IRA, this does not work. It's very important to remember that. This is only for your 401k plan. So if you move on or you retire in the year you turn 55, you need to leave that money in the 401k. Now here's where that could get dicey. By IRS rule, this is allowed, but the plan will decide under what circumstances that money can be taken. So sometimes this can be rendered completely ineffective because the plan document only allows that plan's assets to come out in lump sum. So really the powerful strategy here is that you would take it over time, but this would actually render it completely ineffective if you had to take all that income in 1 year, which you wouldn't want to do. So you really want to reach out to your individual plan and ask what their provisions are. The other thing you want to be cautious about here is that if you have Roth dollars in your plan, so just because you can take it out before 59 and a half, those Roth dollars are still going to be subject to either the 5-year rule or 59 and a half to be tax-free. So you would still pay tax on the earnings, right? So we're only talking about penalty-free. So I just want you to be careful with that. So the other thing is you need to know that you could then go on to work for another employer, and you could do this from multiple plans. So if you move and you terminate at 55 and say you work somewhere else for 2 more years and then you terminate from that plan, you could do the same thing as long as the money is still in the 401k itself. So you could have one that started at 55, one that started at 57. You just want to remember, can't do that from the IRA. Okay, let's move on and talk about substantially equal periodic payments. Now, this one's going to be a little bit more complicated, so I'm going to try and break it down for you. So basically, this again, moving on from employer plans, this is only available in the IRA. So you would basically retire from work, roll over into an IRA, and you would decide that you want to take these distributions over a set period of time. Now, normally the way a substantially equal periodic payment works, it's also known as 72T under the IRS. Basically, you are deciding to take withdrawals and you want to remove that 10% penalty that becomes before 59 and a half by setting up a set schedule. And the IRS allows you to do this in one of 3 ways and for a period of time that is the greater of 5 years or the age you reach 59 and a half. So the reason I bring up the time period first is because this has greater flexibility. So say that you were a super saver and you want to retire at 50, 52, 48, whatever it is, the 55 rule is not available to you. But this is, because if you have a very, very large 401k, it actually may be advantageous for you to roll it into an IRA, because you could then take payments over again. If say you're 50, then the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half would be you have to take these substantial payments from the age 50 until you reach 59 and a half. Now let's talk about those three methods. There's three. One is called the required minimum distribution method, one is called the amortization method, and one is called the annuitization method. So I'm going to take one of these in turn and explain them to you. So let's start with the required minimum distribution method. Okay, so starting this off, I want to talk through what's called the required minimum distribution method. So when it comes to substantially equal periodic payments, it's also referred to as 72T. That's what it's listed as in the Internal Revenue Code. So I'm going to start with the three tables that you can use for the RMD method. Now, very simply put, the RMD method is just required minimum distribution. You're going to take the amount that you have in an IRA, and they're going to use over those periods the number that corresponds to the table here listed. So we have three tables: the uniform life table, the single life table, and the joint and last survivor table. Now, I'm going to not show you the joint and survivor table because that is less applicable to most people, and that's someone who has a spouse that is more than 10 years younger than themselves. And what you do is you do an intersection of your age and the spouse's age to come up with that required minimum distribution method. Now, remember, the required minimum distribution method is one of three methods that you can use to actually do substantially equal periodic payments, and it will provide the lesser of those three, of the three. So if you want less each year, you want to choose the required minimum distribution method. So let's talk through what these tables actually are and what they look like. So most people are going to use the uniform lifetime table, and that is listed here. And what you're going to see is I'm going to use an example where someone is 55 years old and they're going to start taking their substantially equal payments. This is the number that you would divide the amount that you have in the IRA by to get your annual payout. So in this case, it's 43.6. And going back to this would be the single life table that is here. Notice the single is substantially lower, right? So if you think about this, if you divide by a larger number in the denominator, it's going to be a smaller payout. So the single would give you a larger payout. And then let me show you this visually. So we have a 55-year-old here. They have $2 million. So under the single life expectancy method, they are going to divide that number by 31.6. Under the uniform life table, it's 43.6. So you can see a substantial difference there in terms of what they are taking. Now, one other thing I want to note here, just because your required minimum distribution amount is that first amount in the first year, it will change. Now, it will change slightly. Remember, you can only change according to what the number is. So let's just go back to these first two numbers. The single life table, 31.6, the uniform, 43.6. I'm just going to click on one of these to show you. This is the single life table. So notice the first year you're going to divide that number by 31.6. The next year it's going to be 30.6, and so on and so forth. However long it takes, in this case we'd have to go past 59 and a half, because if we start at 55, remember the rule is it has to be the greater of 5 years or 59 and a half. So in this case we'd have to go beyond that. So every year we're dividing by this number, which means our payout, or what we receive, is actually more each year. Okay, let's continue this discussion on the substantially equal periodic payments, and we're going to discuss the amortization method. Now, this is very similar to the annuitization method, and for the sake of time in this video and in terms of practicality, they work very similarly. So I'm just going to show you this one, and this will apply very similarly to the annuitization method. So what do you need in addition to the tables to calculate this? Well, the answer is you need an applicable federal rate. So I have the IRS table here, and what you use is you use 120% of the midterm. I'm going to highlight this applicable federal rate. Now you notice this is either going to be annual, semi-annual, quarterly, or monthly. So according to how you want to take out your money, you're going to use that rate. Now, what are the rules? The rules are you can use the greater of 5% or the 2 preceding months 120% applicable federal rate for the time period that you're going to be taking out the money. So in this case, we have rates as high. We're going to use monthly. Our highest rate is 4.46. So we could either use that rate, or we could use 5, because 5 is the highest we could use. So I'm going to show you, I'm just going to use 4, and I'm going to show you how this actually works. So all you're calculating is you're calculating a present value number of $1 over the number of years you choose from your life expectancy table at the rate, discounted at the rate that you choose. So I'm just going to do this in real time just so you see it. So we're going to use $1 as the payment. We're going to do 31.6 as our time period. And we're going to use 4. So we're going to get a present value, and I'm going to write this on the screen, of 17.7. Okay, well that doesn't mean anything to you, but it will. So what we're going to do is take 17.7, and remember, this is a 55-year-old person with $2 million. And again, doing this in real time, we're going to divide this by 17.7, which means our payout is $112,994.35. So you can see this is substantially more, right? So this might be utilized for someone who wants to take a large amount out of their IRA for these number of years, right? They might have good reason for it. They might know that there's more money coming their way. They might want to mitigate required minimum distributions later, and they really want to spend down this IRA. This is the way, and this is the calculation where you could spend more and distribute more. So just realize you don't have to use only one IRA. Remember, this is based off a plan that you set up for an individual IRA. You could have multiple IRAs, and you could create a plan on one and not a plan on the other. So you want to do the math, split that IRA in the right way so that your distributions match what you need. So that explains very succinctly what the amortization method is. So now that you understand kind of how the math works to get these payments in a 72T or a substantially equal periodic payment plan, I want to have a few concluding thoughts. Number one is going to be measure twice and cut once. The penalties for not executing this plan properly are steep. So if you have a year where you do not execute this correctly and you accidentally take too much of a withdrawal during the plan period, it will backdate to when you started the plan. So that will be a 10% penalty on the amounts that you withdrew that you thought you were withdrawing without a penalty. So please be very careful when you execute this kind of plan. Number two is be aware of those applicable federal rates. Those are constantly changing, and if you have a higher rate, you're going to have a higher payout. A lower rate is a lower payout, so you can manipulate that rate, especially in the amortization method, depending on how you'd like to do it. And then thirdly, I would say make sure this fits into your overall broader financial plan. So this isn't right for everyone. And I will say in conclusion, these really two big methods, the rule of 55 and the substantially equal periodic payment plans, should be carried out in conjunction with your overall financial plan. So I'd love to hear your comments, your thoughts. Are you doing this? Do you want to do it? What do you think about it? Do you think that they're helpful, or do you think that one is better than the other? Love to know your thoughts. Please comment, subscribe, like, and I will see you guys on the next one.